Peter, hi. Good to see you after our hydro chamber experience. How are you feeling?
Do you know, I feel absolutely rejuvenated. Certainly quite a shock to the system when we first went in.
Yeah.
I was dreading the fact that why did I make it 4, not 3? But actually, once I'd regulated my breathing, could have done longer and felt fantastic and, really alive and absolutely raring to go.
Well, he's telling the truth, guys. So it's going to be down to others to sort of step up to the plate. So today is I'm going to give you, first of all, the famous glasses cleaner. This is my business card. So there's the business card. So there you go.
I feel privileged now.
Nice little present.
I can assure you it'll be well used with my glasses.
And I've got a whole load of things here, which is kind of like, if we talk about health and mental health, I mean, for me, I kind of do intermittent fasting. So I don't know if you've ever tried a Huel.
I haven't tried a Huel, no.
We've got vanilla, chocolate, and banana. So let's have a look. Let's see what you think of the Huel. It's got lots of goodness in it, apparently.
Yeah.
This is the banana, 100% nutritionally complete meal. I'm not getting paid for this, by the way. This is something that I try and take. So you try the banana.
Right. Well, I like the packaging. I do like bananas. They're so good, so much potassium. Here we go.
Vanilla.
Now that is honestly superb. I could really get used to that. That's very nice.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's the
So that's
banana
the
one.
banana one.
Banana.
This one's the vanilla.
Yeah. JR, lovely cameraman's going to have banana.
Yeah. You won't be disappointed with that, Jay, I can assure you. Going in for the vanilla now. Oh. That's good too. Probably the banana just gets it for
So
me.
banana ahead of vanilla. And the
But
best
it's a close one. It's a close one.
the last one is we've
But I
got
still got the
chocolate.
That's all right.
So this has got 26 all essential vitamins and minerals. It's high protein, 20 grams of plant-based, slow energy release, omega-3 and 6, and 8 grams of fiber.
Well, I'm going to fight Jay for the banana. 'Cause that, interestingly, the order of tasting is a numerity for me. So definitely banana first, vanilla second, chocolate third. They're all good, to be wrong.
Yeah,
but if I had to rate one over the others, it would definitely be banana.
Excellent.
Which is why I'm going to, which is why actually I'm finishing this one off, if you don't mind.
But no, seriously though, I mean, for you, what do you do to look after yourself and keep fit? I mean, we're just going to be mindful of the good old cameras there for you, but what do you do to keep fit? How do you look after yourself?
Yeah, so I'm an early bird, Paul. So I try and get myself to bed at a reasonable hour, 10:30, 11 o'clock at the latest. And I commute to London most days, so I'm on the first train there is.
What time is that?
It's 5:20.
Wow. Okay. So what time do you get out of bed?
So I get out of bed at 5:20. Okay.
Wow.
And there's some positives to that. Well, first of all, there's no traffic to the station.
Yeah.
There's very few people on the train. And that first train is the most reliable, believe it or not, because, the day hasn't started. So if that train's not running, you've got a bad day ahead of you, if that makes sense. So early train up, get up into the city for 6:30, and then I hit the gym. I've got a gym close to the office in the city, and I try and do between 45 minutes and an hour every day I'm in the office. And that really sets me up perfectly. I'm lucky that the company I work with have got some fantastic changing facilities, etc. So is the gym. So all of my kit is up in London, and then I can hit the desk from about 8:30 till 9 o'clock. Absolutely ready to go. The endorphins are going. I have breakfast on site, and always use the mixture between the fruit bowl and the sausage baguette. And I'd like to say that the sausage baguette unfortunately wins more often than it should do.
Yeah.
But that's that gym, aerobic as well as weights. And I do it with some colleagues as well. So that we vie to each other, right, who's going to get there first. There's a bit of competition.
I did notice in the Cryo chamber, you were a little bit competitive. First time in, it's like 3.5 minutes is what we recommend. Let's go 4.
I think in the environment, I'm, my ultimate role is in sales. And I think that, sales is a competitive nature.
Yeah.
And so whatever I do, if I throw myself into it, I'm going to do it. Good example is, a number of years ago, I ran my first London marathon.
Wow.
Okay. Now, I wasn't fast. Okay. But I ran the marathon and I still got a medal. And when you've got a medal, a finishing medal, it doesn't tell you that, what was your time? My time was lousy, but I did it. And then I did it the following year.
Yeah.
I did it the following year, which, believe it or not, was harder because you knew what you were going to get yourself into, if that makes sense. So I wasn't built for speed, determination. If I set myself something to do, I was going to do it. which is why the cryo chamber, when we said before, I wasn't leaving before that ball was up, by hell or
the
high
shock
water.
for the first 10 seconds, it was like, I just had to get you breathing and sort of breathe through it.
Yeah, that first 10 seconds, I thought to myself, what have I done? By 30 seconds to 45, I'm then slightly more relaxed and by the time it was going to 3 or 4, I could have gone on. So it's mind over matter. And I'm a great believer in mental well-being as well as physical well-being. Because, and I learned that from my marathon training, because when I did it the second time, ironically, when we got to Canary Wharf, that's when you hit the proverbial wall, if that makes sense. And that second time, my head went. And for all the physical training I'd done, when your head goes, I promise you your body goes. Now, I got round it, but it was far harder. And what I learned from that was that you can train all you like, but you've got to have the mental agility as well as the physical.
Do you meditate? Do you pray? I mean, what do you do to make sure that you're in the best mental position you can be when you're sort of either working, when you're overcoming challenges? How do you get through that stuff?
No problem. Well, another advantage of getting that first train, other than it's quiet and it's, dare I say, fairly reliable, but unfortunately, trains and reliability don't go hand in hand currently.
It's a shame.
Is actually, I do try and what I call recharge the battery slightly. So I actually probably do meditate without thinking too much about it. I get my eyes shut. I'm not in a deep sleep. Actually, I can set myself up that turns around and says, I'm on that train. I'm going to London. I've got my routine.
So visualization.
Visualize, absolutely right. And I do try and do a bit of thing. I also listen to a bit of music, but I'm massively into my podcasts. But podcasts of a variety of scenarios, if that makes sense, from true crime to politics to sport. If the subject matter grabs me, I absolutely love it. And again, what happens on the commute is the podcast takes you into a different world, and before you know it, you're dropping off into a state, etc., which is so good for the mind.
I mean, I find that for me, meditation, prayer, sea swimming, cold therapy, through the last few years for me has been a sort of journey of discovery. And I think when you grow up, get older, your life experiences determine things. And I think for me, your daily rituals, you get up, you do this, it's in your order, you set yourself up for the day, you visualize that success. And then, at the end of the day, it's important to reflect and have gratitude and thank yourself and be mindful is so more important. I think in the past, certainly for men and certainly for me, I've posted about sea swimming or cold therapy. I've had grown men have messaged me, thank you. You've really helped me. I do cold showers now. I was in a really bad place. Thank you for sharing. And I think for men, it's really hard sometimes to talk about things and share their struggle. I hope people do that more moving forward.
On that note, I think for me, it's having a routine, if that makes sense. But going back to your thing about men, one thing that we're all pretty common characteristics on is that we don't share things. I look at what my wife talks to her girlfriends about, and they'll talk about everything, absolutely everything. If that makes sense. And what I talk to my guys about is not deep and emotional. And I think, I implore us to do more of that, for example, because, a problem is a problem halved, and it's a corny saying, but it absolutely is. I also think as well, guys, you've got to be willing to share those feelings, etc. Because, there's not enough of that sort of thing. That's why women are so much better than, because they do self-support each other. Us guys, if we've got those problems, we keep it inwardly. We don't share it, if that makes sense. And you've got to share it because there are people out there that can help.
Agreed. And the other thing I found in my journey of discovery is something called Trip. So this is a peach ginger, lightly sparkling thing, which helps to calm your mind. So I'm going to give you another little sample.
I'm going to be buzzing soon, aren't I? I'm going to be absolutely buzzing.
This is a journey through discovery of
and this is ginger.
This is nature's botanicals for your body. Ginseng, turmeric, chamomile.
Well, again, for the purposes of the camera, I'll let you discover what you actually looks like. But
this is to help calm you amidst the everyday chaos.
Right.
Trips. And one of my members of staff mentioned this to me, and I think sometimes when you're super stressed, rather than having a coffee or a tea, there's always something else out there that just might help you.
Well, do you know, I'm as chilled as a cucumber now. I've gone from, it certainly leaves a taste in the back of your throat.
Ginger or the turmeric?
I think it's probably the ginger,
Hmm.
but it's definitely leaving a lasting taste in the back of your throat. But it's not just, it's
all right. We'll do one more. So we got all these kind of good things that I've learned out the way. No sugar, natural, again, a live cultured drink.
Mm.
So mental health comes from good gut health. So if your gut health is in a good condition, your mental health will always be the same. So for me, going through my challenges with my daughter, our voyage of discovery came from stool samples. So when we had stool samples, we could find out what was going on inside, and we could see from all the markers, the inflammation and the parasitic infection that my daughter had that no one even asked us about. It's only until my sheikh said to me, Paul, go to America, speak to America. And the doctor said to me, Paul, you've sent me the bloods, the urines, the MRI. Where's the stool sample? Mm. So for me, good gut health, this is kombucha. Try this one. That's a ching ching, Cheers. This is the last one that I'm going to reflect on you today.
Okay, well, I'm going to be walking on water afterwards. You know what I mean? Talking of cold swimming, I should be swimming back to Canary Wharf.
This is good for gut health. So anyway, it's kind of like...
Very nice.
It's very different, huh?
Yeah, they're all very different, yeah.
So in terms of your day job, you work with a private bank.
Yep.
What is a large mortgage to you?
Well, I mean, very interesting question. I mean, I suppose the starting point is our minimum loan size that we'll look at for new businesses is $1 million.
Yeah.
Would I denominate that as a large loan? No. If it's our minimum, I'd say it's the minimum that we look at. I'd say that our average loan site probably is 3 to 5 million. And what I would class as a large loan for us would be between 15 and 20.
Yeah.
We generally speaking, you've got different private banks with different aspirations of lending, if that makes sense. And some private banks where they'll require what we call assets under management, a loan size might be far greater than that.
Yeah.
But it's certainly, if we look at north of $1 million, I think that's large for most people's scenarios.
It is for the majority of people. And we find that in our business, large mortgages as a brand, largemortgageloans.com, it means different things to different people. If you're buying in Leeds and it's a 300,000 mortgage, it's a large mortgage to you.
Absolutely right. It's all relative.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah. If you're in London and you're an entrepreneurial person, it could be $1 million, it could be 3, it could be 5. We have people sometimes phone us from Goldman Sachs and say, hey, I want to borrow 7 million. Is that large enough? Yeah. Because in their world, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, it's 100 million plus. Because that's the kind of deal flow that they do.
Absolutely right.
And then, when you're arranging on large mortgages, what is important when you're looking at a case?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a brilliant question. So every lender and every private bank has their own sort of niches, if that makes sense. And I suppose where we come at it from Investec, our niche is, and it sounds corny, but it's absolutely true. And it's what I love about the organization is we are very much client-led, not product-led.
Yeah.
So when you go to a retail lender, if that makes sense, you've got to tick a number of boxes, if that makes sense. And what we look at is turn around and say, we know what we can and can't do. We know where our area of expertise is.
And that maybe say, you may do entrepreneurial people, you may do self-employed, but you might not do out property developers. Or is there certain things that are kind of complete no's?
What's the client story for us? Okay. How has a client made their money?
Yeah.
What's their background story? That's absolute essential. Sure. So where have they come from and where are they going? Where's the sense of direction and travel?
And you don't get that today on the high street, do you? Because the computer says no.
No.
It's income, assets, liabilities. You assess it from a private banking perspective. Computer-led income.
The human interaction is absolutely key for us. So we'll sit down with a client and their advisor, and we'll find out what it is that they want, what journey are they going on, and can we support that? I think interestingly, we're probably quite quick at being able to identify those that we can and those that we can't. And, I've been in this industry for too long now, Paul, that actually the intermediaries that I work with, they're never afraid of a quick no, if that makes sense.
I think we always want a quick no.
But a slow no is the worst.
Slow no is the worst. And we have so many companies that sometimes we work with that it's kind of like yes, 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 and it comes no.
Yeah.
And it's like the key thing is, as you say, what we do is bespoke. Every single client is unique and they are an individual. and you have to find a solution that's right for them, whether it's margin, loan to value, blended facilities, whether you're using assets under management on one side of the balance sheet, the debt on the other piece, forward funding of mortgages, where we've done those with you in the past, where the client may not have a, regular income, but if we have some liquidity and we can put 300,000 or 500,000 on one side of the balance sheet, it can service the mortgage for the next 3 and 5 years and helps affordability. I think from a regulator's perspective, I think it's if your minimum income is 300,000 plus and your minimum net assets is 3 million plus, it's down to the individual lender, is my understanding, to decide whether they're going to lend or not.
It's called the high net worth waiver, to be specific. And you're absolutely right, but it's deemed that clients of that nature are financially responsible enough to be able to understand their own balance sheets and their own risk criteria, etc. And I think that for us, what we tend to do is we tend to actually, we want to go on risk with the client. I think that's our key scenario, if that makes sense. A lot of our clients are very entrepreneurially minded. Okay, so they're self-made. We don't particularly help clients who've landed gentry or inheritance-wise, or have sought their income through generational wealth. Most of our clients who are self-made, entrepreneurially, asset and income rich, if that makes sense. So they've built themselves up. And you talk about the Goldman Sachs of this world and the JP Morgans, etc. That's a perfect example of clients who, have gone and got high degrees. They're very intelligent, and they've gone and made their income, if that makes sense. And so we go on risk with them because, these are bright people who actually understand that actually debt is not a dirty word. No. Debt is an opportunity to make more money, if that makes sense, whether it be from an investment property perspective or whether it be their main residence, if that makes sense. So that they'll go on risk. They need someone to go on risk with them, if that makes sense, to go on that journey.
And how do you decide that? Because for me, I don't really have an income per se. So I may have some capital because I've sold something. So I might buy something, sell something. So I have irregular income. I'm entrepreneurial, so I may buy and then sell. And then you look at the track record. How would you sort of assess that?
Well, I think the simple answer, Paul, is everything's case-by-case basis, if that makes sense. So we can look at complex income. We can look at income from various sources, if that makes sense. The key is being able to sit down and say, tell me the track record. And if you're entrepreneurially minded, it's often sitting down with your accountant, or if you're a chief executive of a large organization, sitting down with your CFO and saying, well, look, tell me what's happened in the last 3 years and tell me where you're going. Then that way we can look at it and then assist or not assist. Most of our clients have income from a variety of sources, and, from no income, but they've just built up and sold a company. They've got some, millions in the bank, but they've got no income today. Well, we can assist with that, because I promise you one thing, entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs. And if you build up a company and you sell it, I guarantee you're going to go and do it all over again and probably make it twice as successful and twice as quick. So I think that it's a case of it's understanding the client set, if that makes sense. History is a good judge of future performance, which is why we look back historically and we look forward together. Essentially.
I think that really is a great example of creating solutions and understanding the customer and sitting down with people and talking. I think so many banks don't really talk, and other banks probably invite you in and you sit down and you meet the decision makers. Because at the end of the day, people have to believe that what you're talking about is actually deliverable. And if you have a little bit of a track record, I think for me, the sad thing I find being an entrepreneur is the banks really aren't there for you. When you're starting a business, and when I look back, I sold my house, my car, my boat. I slept in the office, couldn't find any money. And you had to build a company literally deal by deal. And then you rebrand, you find a niche, you become an expert, and then it grows. But banks, they have such an important role to play. I think sometimes that's lost in the modern world of people. The computers and all the talk of AI, etc. It's moving away from the human element.
You know what, Paul? That's not going to change. In fact, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, we
So-
talk about Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, people working from home. And for me, I prefer to be in the office personally as an individual.
100%. Because to be honest with you, I think we learned a lot as a country and as individuals through COVID. And, we learned some positives, we learned some negatives. But the one thing that came crystal clear through to me is that, that power of human interaction above all else, if that makes sense. And what worries me is more and more companies now say in a post-COVID world, oh, well, we can be 100% remote working, etc. I worry about the mental well-being, not just in the weeks and months ahead, but in the years ahead.
I agree.
Because as a human race, we are built for human interaction with each other. And that's why my firm is very much encouraging, like many firms in the city, actually it's that water cooler chat, isn't it? It's that face-to-face. And if we are a people-led organization where actually we want to go on risk with clients, we don't want to do that on Zoom or Teams. We want to do that face-to-face. We want to look in the whites of your eyes, shake your hand, and actually tell and say, are you good for it? And call me old-fashioned, but actually you can't beat that.
No,
And but you can still use technology to aid the process. So often we'll do an initial call over Teams, because actually at the end of the day, finding a mutual time for us and the clients, we can do that very efficiently. Do we at one stage want a face-to-face meeting? Absolutely right. Yes, we do. So I think it's adopting technology, working together so that you've got a blended opportunity that they both give. All from home, I think is a worrying precedent to take.
No, it's true. I mean, for me, my journey and things, it's like both for my daughters, because of ill health and surgery and things, we do online digital school.
Yeah.
And when you're a parent and you do something that's not normal or not considered normal, it's kind of sad how other humans don't want to know you anymore because you're doing something different. And then you don't want their children being influenced by the online digital school. But for me, it's needs must. My youngest daughter didn't want to go to school in case she caught COVID because our eldest daughter was at risk.
Yeah.
And so mentally, it was a 9-year-old child, and she wouldn't tell me because I was in hospital with our eldest daughter. She wouldn't tell my wife because she was looking after our 1-year-old little boy at the time. So a poor 9-year-old child has got no one to talk to. And the child psychologist was the one that told us what she was saying and how she was thinking. And that for me was like horrendous and upsetting, because there must be so many other children and also adults that haven't spoken about things.
Well, do you know, I can relate to that in the sense of pre-COVID, my boys attended school, but we've always had, from a very young age, a private tutor. 2 or 3 hours a week, used to come round to the house post-school. They'd sit down together and made a huge difference. And when COVID came, immediately, like the world, they were homeschooled on Teams or via the school. And the tutor said, well, look, we'll go to virtual lending, if that makes sense. And the boys, both now that much older now, for example, brought up in that technological world. And so in a post-COVID world, when the tutor could come back in, the boys both decided that actually it's perfectly, we'll carry on in that world, if that makes sense. And I didn't see it. So the tutor got to see more people. It made no difference to the boys, because they still had the human interaction of school. So look, I see the pros and the cons, if that makes sense. But I also see the opportunities. And what's very interesting is our children are growing up in a world that we didn't grow up in.
My daughter's editing some of my videos and things for me. It's like, Daddy, I can do this for you in seconds.
Well, they know your way around the iPhone better than you will.
That's incredible.
All I know is if it doesn't work, just turn it off.
I mean,
back on again. But it always works for me.
Yeah, turn it on, turn it off, and if it doesn't work,
Yeah.
it's kind of like throw it out the window.
Right.
But if you were starting again, so let's say, for example, you're 18 years old, what advice would you be giving yourself in terms of the future Peter, the future career at 18?
Well, I thought long and hard about this, and I think it's very simple. Is 18, the world's against you, or so you think.
You think so.
But actually it isn't. And I think when you go to work, whether you decide to go to university or whether you decide to go get an apprenticeship and go out there and get life skills, etc. Most 18-year-olds don't know what they're actually wanting to do. If you do, wonderful, follow that, etc. But if you don't know, okay, follow your gut. I tell you another thing as well, Paul, you're going to be working for a long time.
True.
Okay, so whatever it is that you do, if you can find work that you enjoy, that's a massive step. Because if you're unhappy in the work that you do, for example, it will have ramifications for you. So be bold and try different experiences, etc.
I mean, I see that a lot on CVs.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Try it,
people that are younger, have had 3 jobs, 6 to 12 months, because they're still finding
a way. But every job, you'll learn something new. So embrace yourself and be willing to immerse yourself in that position. Because every role that you do, every manager that you have, every colleague that you have, you'll learn something new. Take the positives, learn from the negatives, because even the negatives will make you better for the future, if that makes sense.
I think for me, I've learned more from my challenges than I have from when
100%.
things are going well. You need to enjoy those moments because there's more challenges, certainly when you're in business, the highs and lows of the market, etc. You learn more from your challenges. And I think for me today, with these various drinks and supplements and things and the journey of discovery, it's only as a result of my challenges that I've experienced new ways to deal with stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the past, when I was younger, it's like you'd go and have 3 pints, 5 pints, and you'd party, and kind of like drink was a thing. And when I was much younger, I used to go to church on a regular basis, and for me, it was the Salvation Army, and I still go there, and visit, and I used to take my late father there. And it's finding those things that give you peace. When the world is so chaotic and the social media is 24/7, and for me, if I'm getting 300, 500 messages a day, whether it's phone, text, email, it's so important to have that peace.
So Paul, you talk about you learn from your mistakes, from your challenges. In my career, the 4 years that I was in trying to start a lender, okay, and if I tell you our timing with hindsight was the worst you could possibly imagine. So we launched a new lender, and a month later, Northern Rock swung.
Wow.
Okay, the first UK bank in 120 years to fail, and a year later, Lehman swung. And we turned from a UK banking crisis to a worldwide banking crisis. Now, we survived 4 years, okay? Unfortunately, we never did launch. We turned our hand, etc. Now, I learned more in those 4 years as a startup in a small team where you constantly, day by day, learning how am I going to pivot? How am I going to move into different sectors, if that makes sense? Where there is no big HR department and technology department. You all have to become experts in everything, if that makes sense. And so we didn't succeed, but I learned more in those 4 years than I'd done in the previous 24 years. And so, celebrate the successes, learn from the failures, but don't see failures as failures. See them as opportunities to make more successes.
I think for me, it's learning. I don't see it as failure anymore. It's just learning.
Yeah.
And I'm always learning.
Yeah.
Every single day I listen to YouTube. That was a fitness instructor in Guernsey said to me, look at YouTube. There's so many amazing resources on there, from individuals, from diet to exercise to meditation to breathing to prayer. It's all there.
Well, the euphemism I use is that, every day is a school day.
Correct.
And whether you're doing explicitly or not, if you can get up and embrace the world that we're in and learn something, and it can be something major, it can be something minor. Isn't that the wonderful nature of where we live today? If that makes sense?
It's true.
And that's where having children does bring that to you, because, they make me young. I have a team of 6 colleagues that work with me, if that makes sense. They're all younger than me. And some of them I sort of act as a fatherly figure, and some of them as a brotherly figure, etc. But that young dynamism keeps me young, both mentally and physically. And so that's what I love, in the sense of, I think actually, if you can wake up every day and actually embrace that opportunity of learning, the world's a better place for it. And there's so much out there. But we talk about social media and things. You've got to filter, though. You've got to ensure that you filter. because for every plus of social media, there is a downside as well.
I mean, it's a negative with our daughters, because their daughter said, Daddy, I've read this. And I said, it's not true.
Yeah.
You can't believe what you read or what you listen to. And I think for me, the one thing I find that really irritates me is how much negativity there is in the press.
Yeah.
And I think how much damage must be caused. You know, if interest rates are rising, it's, oh my God, mortgage mayhem is the headlines. And I'm thinking, that's really not needed, and it's really not helpful.
How many times have you seen the front of the Mail or the Express, or all of them, to be fair, I'm not just realizing that, turns around and says, house price crash afar, if that makes sense, and of course the cynic in me turns around and says it will grab all the headlines and it will get a huge social media, etc. But you've got to look behind the facts, if that makes sense.
But it's sad, isn't it? Because sometimes people don't know any different. They're like, what am I going to do? And there are other people, I mean, I've had it recently where, I had a lady phone me up and said, do I feed my children? Do I heat my house? Or do I drive to work? Because I can't afford all three. And it's kind of like, for me, it's, we don't need, I think we need to be helping more, and one thing I don't understand is when you walk around the streets all around the world, there are homeless people. How can that be possible today that people are sleeping on the street? I talk to a lot of them and how did you end up here? And it's kind of like younger people, domestic abuse at home, nowhere to sleep, don't have the money to sleep, they have no choice. But I think there's so much wealth in the world and so many people could really make a difference. Society isn't channeling that right. If you've got 1 billion, that's amazing. And yes, a lot of people do a lot of good, and they do a lot of good that's under the radar. And I think sometimes we pay a lot of tax, we pay a lot of national insurance, and when you're in the UK, you feel as though you're working for yourself 2 days a week and the government 3 days a week. I live in Guernsey. I was born in Guernsey. I moved there to look after my late father, but for me, it's 20% in the pound. That seems a fairer thing. But with challenges like the homeless and things, and food banks, I just think sometimes the wealthier could do more, not through taxation, but it's just kind of like, okay, Mr. Client, you're sat in 50 million of cash. If we were to do secured lending for that and we make 3%, why don't we give 1% away to help others? And for me, that's what I'd like to do more of if I can, in terms of helping others. Is there any things that you're sort of passionate about in terms of that kind of theme, helping others or making a difference, giving? What are your thoughts on that?
So a couple of things. First, you stepped on it before, but faith. Believe it or not, I was born in Kenya to a father who was a vicar out there.
Wow.
And
I never knew that.
So whilst I don't necessarily share in the same level of faith he did, I do have a faith. And only 2 years ago, on my bucket list, I went back to his church in Nairobi, embraced by the church there, for example. And I had that sort of calling, central calling.
Yeah.
And I've been back twice since, etc. So I do a lot of work out there, following in my father's footsteps, and that the spiritualistic side of things, as well as the feeling of the community. Because what I see in Kenya and Africa as a whole, I was born there, so it's probably in my heart and
How
in my
long
blood.
did you live there for?
Well, it was only 6 months before we came back. My father was involved in a nasty accident over there, and we came back to the UK for medical treatment. And unfortunately, he never went back. What I saw there is, in somewhere like Kenya or other African nations, the poor is really poor. I mean, you go to the shanty towns.
Those are the happiest people.
And absolutely. So you go to a shanty town where there's 6 people living in a corrugated shack. The church is made up of three corrugated iron sheds. They've got nothing. But what they've got, which we need to be more aware of, is they've got their family and they've got their faith. Okay? And if you've got those 2 strong things, you've got everything. So that's something very, very close to my heart, and we do a lot of work over there. And rather than just take stuff over there, for example, it's more of a case I want to be there on the ground, and actually physically giving and helping with education and things like that. So that's a very passionate area of mine. And actually, do you know what? When I stand in the pulpit in the church, I'm not necessarily preaching the word of the Lord. I'm preaching the word of Peter Izard. But I think through that comes a faith of some description. I've never discounted the fact that just what's to say that one day I don't calling, but I suppose I tend to do his work through others.
I agree. I know the feeling of the calling because you just have a gut feeling about something. You need to do something.
Yeah.
You can't explain what it is and why it is, but you just get guided.
Yeah.
Really strange. I've always found that for me, I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't have gone to the Salvation Army when I was like 7 years old. I used to go there every week and we were terrible children. I mean, there was a lady there, Phyllis Burns, who's no longer with us. And I got to say thank you to her for her patience and looking after us. And there was Major, I think it's David Jones and Valerie. I mean, there's 3 young boys, we're fighting and cricket bats and football and all sorts of things. But that kind of, you learn balance, I think, for me in terms of helping others.
Well, my first job, my first foray into financial services was with the wonderful Wesleyan and General. And of course, the Wesleyan and General Assurance Society took over the Salvation Army, etc. So again, in the work that they do now, and ironically, I love going into the cafe at the Salvation Army on Millennium Bridge, if anyone ever sees out there. So they're a wonderful cafe, but, with great staff and great food, and you're indirectly sort of supporting the Salvation Army. And I think that the work that they do, etc., I like to be practical. So any of my charitable giving, both financially, but I like to be hands-on.
Yes.
So at Investec, we're big on sustainability. So rather than actually, as well as donating a sum each month or it's something, it's actually tangibly, right, can you go and work for this charity for a day, for a few days? Can you go and do a week here, or can you give up some time? So feet on the ground, if that makes sense, making a difference. And that's great, because you can actually, when you donate to a charity, you feel good. Okay, but it goes into an abyss where does it go? But if I actually go to somewhere, if I go to a charity and I give up my time for free, that's a whole game changer for me. And I think that's what's so important for me, if that makes sense. And that's why, going back to Kenya, I want to go there and turn around and say, well, put me to work. So if I go to I might go and do some work at the school or something like that, for example, or, let me help you with the new church that you're building or something. I'm no builder, but I can move some bricks and I can mix some cement and put me to work is what I'm saying.
I mean, for me, one of the biggest learnings that's kind of got us here today really is that we did some work for the famous YouTuber called Mr. Beast, and we were asked to source the jet, and we did, and we gave it away, and then in a competition. And then he has, you have the UK version on YouTube, which is the Sidemen, and the charitable aspect of giving. I mean, look at Mr. Beast's philanthropy. He will go to Africa and he will either, help with operations, he will create water, electricity, power, but the power of giving makes such a big difference. And that platform, that individual last year, I think, had 19.1 billion views of his content. And the world, like for my children, is content creation, but it's content creation to the power of the good. For him, I did some sea swimming. I helped the charity Cash for Kids, and we're always looking to raise money for less fortunate children who don't have presents at Christmas. How can you not have a present at Christmas? That was just kind of like, mentally, I just did not understand. How could you wake up on a Christmas day and not have a present? I mean, I couldn't really comprehend that. So I tried to help a lady there, Samantha Tanner, with that. And it's all from the Mr. Beast journey that I've been on, helping that business and then learning from a guy. He's only 24 years young. He's doing so much good through his work, which he's passionate about doing on the content creation, which has become a business. And then the charitable aspect's another level.
You know what, Paul? That reminds me though. I'm sure I've quoted it wrong, but the principle we were saying: you can give a man a fish and he'll survive for a day. You can teach him to fish and he'll survive for a lifetime. Isn't that what Mr. Beast is trying to do? Isn't that what we're all trying to extol here? Makes sense. In a sense of, he can make a donation, actually make something different. So if he's had 19 million views on it.
Billion.
Billion.
19.1
Unbelievable,
billion.
you know.
I know.
But what he's done then is he's brought the subject to people's minds, hasn't he?
Yeah.
That's a game changer, rather than just making a one-off donation that makes him feel good. Does it have, what's the biggest effect? And that's why I think, to me, you know, again, slightly changing the subject, but, you know, well, very much changing the subject. You know, I think, why aren't we doing more financial education at schools?
I think, well, for me, my children do online education, and you know, we are very keen to take them outside of the house, socialise with others, and clubs and things. But for me, I'm very simple with my children. It's kind of like, buy something for £1, sell it at £3. If you can learn the skill of negotiation and listening.
And that opportunity exists now, doesn't it? If that makes sense. So even, you know, my youngest son is a budding entrepreneur in the sense of, you know, he's looked at some of his schoolmates and they're selling, you know, buying at car boot sales, selling on eBay. I think that's fantastic. I think what us as parents need to do, we're lucky in the sense of our children can be brought up into a world. They've got to be reminded that they are privileged for. It's not their, they've been dealt the hand that they have, if that makes sense. So I think as parents, we need to be able to actually, you know, the biggest gift that we can give them is to turn around and say that, look, your parents work hard to give you what you've got. There's opportunities out there. You've got to embrace them. You've also got to show them actually things aren't given on a plate. And what you've got, what handed down, you've earned that. You've worked for that. And I think that installing that into them, and your simple analogy about buying it for £1 and selling it for free is brilliant.
It's just a start though, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, we can't be good at certain things. It's a journey of discovery and finding what you're good at.
But also as well, explaining to them the world's a bigger place so that they're not isolated. I mean, I'm a massive football fan. So I and my sons, by the nature, were never going to not support my team. And so that my team is the Brighton Hove Albion.
Oh, excellent.
Which are very much on the way
well.
up. I supported Brighton from 85. So, you know, we were one game out from going out the Football League. I followed them home and away, and we're now foraying into Europe, and I'm pinching myself. One of the things I loved more than anything is, you know, easier when we were in the lower leagues, was taking my children away to away games. And, you know, no disrespect, but you could take them to some areas which were fairly deprived, if that makes sense. And without them saying anything, you could just turn around and say, Dad, I'm just so, you know, we're so lucky to live where we do. And that was great because you thought to yourself, you know, psychologically, my lesson as my duty as a parent is to show them there, you know. And my eldest son came out to Kenya with me for the first visit. And, you know, of all the things that we did, we went out on safari and we did all the usual tourist stuff, etc. The thing that he talks about constantly, and this is a son who hides his emotions close to his heart, bless him, was when we went to a children's home. Okay. Now, a children's home is a polite way of saying an orphanage. And you had 60, 70 children ranging from babies right the way up to 16-year-olds. And we brought them a load of football kits, you know, from various different football teams, etc. We bought them some football, and Wills went and played football. And we were there for 2 or 3 hours, and you couldn't extract us away. And when we left, you know, he turned around and said afterwards, when we were coming back, Dad, he said, it was wonderful doing the safaris, etc. The thing I'll never forget, the thing that I want to go back and do is a children's home visit. He said, because those have got nothing. They've got absolutely nothing at all. But the gratitude they had when they put on the Man United shirt, the Arsenal shirt, when I kicked a ball around with them, he said, it was just unbelievable, you know. And that really sought home to me, if that makes sense. It just said, look, you know, and I think, you know, that was inspiring for me. You know?
I think for me, it's all about making a difference. And I'm hoping that for those that have listened today, may have learned something, you may want to go out, make a difference. We can help, either Peter and I, in any way, whether it's career advice, you want to talk, it's good to talk. All I ask of you is, thank you very much, Peter, for being a guest today.
Yeah.
And
thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
I think one thing you can see, Paul, is that we're not short of conversation.
No, we've done well. I think for us, we had no script. We was sit and talk.
We said we were just going to let the camera roll, and I think we've done that. My thanks to you as well. You know, Paul, you and I have known each other for some time. I think we share some very similar values, etc. But one thing, I'm heartfelt. Reach out to us because we will always be there. I've always got time, because the time is the gift of time, and the gift of advice is priceless.
So thank you very much
No
indeed.
problem. Thank you.
Really, really appreciate
And
it.
thank you for watching.
Yeah.
You know.
And any questions, give us a call and make a difference any way you can, even if it's £1. Thank you.